Okay, good to go. Awesome. Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's great to be back, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone about Photoshop product management. And I have a use case that I wanted to go through that kind of talks about an end-to-end from idea to ship feature. And before I get started, I just wanted to give a quick plug to my esteemed colleague, Davis Brown, who is speaking later today, I think at 4:30. He's one of the best experienced designers I've ever worked with, and he's doing a talk later today that kind of gets into Photoshop and AI features. So I hope everyone can attend that because he is a super smart, brilliant designer, and I think everyone can learn from him. So I'll dive on in. So a couple just very quick bullet points about me. I'm from Seattle. U of W is very close and dear to my heart, but now I live in San Diego where the weather's pretty amazing. I've been at Adobe almost 27 years, be 27 next month. I'm a principal product manager on the Photoshop desktop team. And I did a talk last year about how I made the switch from experience design into product management. So if you're interested in that kind of track, you can go to last year's recording. So basically, I've had three phases of my career at Adobe: quality assurance, experience design, and the last 9 years, product management. I'm also a working artist and graphic designer and showed a few little images of some stuff that I like to create in my spare time. And I'm just super nerdy. I love architecture. I love textiles, print design, computers. And most recently, I've been really into VR fitness, which I never thought I would care about VR, but I am totally sold. So you just never know. Um, so a quick thing about my education. So I have a BFA in graphic design from WSU. I worked on an MBA for about a year and a half, didn't go so great, switched over and got an MFA. And then right out of school, I started working at Adobe in 1997, and I've been there ever since. Um, and then here's just a kind of a highlight. You can go back and look at this later, but I worked on a lot of products, some that were awesome, some that weren't. But I started on the Photoshop team, worked there in 1997 and 98, and then came back to Photoshop 3 years ago. And it's funny that a lot of things changed, but a lot of things stayed the same, which is kind of an interesting observation since coming onto the team. And then finally, some features, improvements, new features I've worked on since being on the team almost 3 years. I won't go through everything, but the highlights are I work on ML selection tools, like the object selection tool, select subject. And initially I started on the team as the typography expert. So I worked on the type tool for about 2 years. And now I'm on to more, features that kind of cut across all of Photoshop. So I will segue into what is product management because I think, if you've been in design school, you may not have a lot of exposure to what product management is, at least in the software industry. And it definitely varies company to company, product to product, and actually team to team. But the one thing that is constant, it is sort of a melding of bringing tech, business, and what customers want together. And you sort of orchestrate all of these things to deliver ideas to the marketplace. And it's an interesting role because you work with designers, developers, quality, legal, all sorts of people all over the company. It's different every single day. And one of the key kind of skills that you need to have is, you just really need to be able to communicate really, really, really well, make good decisions, hopefully based on data, and then be able to execute and really inspire people to work on this common mission and goal that you have. There are a bunch of functions with product management, but I'm just picked two that sort of fit into the design space more. And these two happen to be where I spend most of my time as a product manager. And one of them is planning, speccing, developing and testing new features. And the other one is either doing research, prototyping, or testing, even before we get to the whole developing phase. And I cannot do this without design. So it's really a partnership that's like super, super important. I could not do it without having a design partner. And then this graphic kind of shows, like, not to be like egocentric or whatnot, but the product manager is sort of orchestrating all these things around to make sure that all this work is flowing and we have everything we need to actually release something to the marketplace. And I think a lot of people don't see that there are like tens, if not 100 people involved sometimes when delivering a feature to market, which is pretty cool. And then a couple of key skills of a product manager. And these are things that, you know, that I've highlighted here. Like if you're interested in moving into the software space after you graduate, definitely learn about key performance indicators, Scrum, Agile, how product managers create goals or key objectives. Learn about how you might do research. And it doesn't have to be a deep dive, but just having kind of the basics will really, really help you in interviews. And it kind of distinguishes you from other experienced designers that are applying for roles. And I think you already come to the interviews knowing UX best practices and things like that. So those are kind of the hard skills. And then there's, you know, obviously the soft skills of communication, collaboration, storytelling, critical thinking, analytical thinking, public speaking, problem solving. You know, these are things I use day to day. Some I'm great at, some I'm not, and I work at it. But you know, it's all work in progress, and everyone kind of has their strengths and weaknesses. This is kind of specific to Adobe, but I have a feeling that it's probably similar in other companies, is there are different types of product managers, just like there are different type of designers. And on the Photoshop team, we kind of lean a little bit heavy on the MBA or the business type product manager. So they're thinking about, you know, ways to productize and make money and forecast how a feature or a segment of people could benefit from a feature. Then we have technical PMs that, you know, deal with GPUs and very technical aspects of hardware and Photoshop. And then I personally consider myself a UX PM, primarily because I came from the design group and I know a lot about UX. So I really focus on the user experience of any feature that I work on. And, you know, basically it's the same pipeline. You do your research, you try to prototype something, you test it, you validate it, and then for things that aren't going well, you iterate. And that's kind of the flow. And again, I cannot do this without my design partner. So, and then we have two other type of product managers: generalists. They know a little of everything. They know business. They know a little bit of UX. They're kind of good at everything, but maybe not focused on one particular thing. And then we kind of have the outlier product managers that do like growth or kind of these really niche areas. And we do have several of those on our team. So for me as a UX PM, I'm all about thinking about design principles, design thinking, researching, testing, and working with our dev teams to, you know, actually deliver something awesome. And it is a long process, and it does take a lot of people and a lot of time, but if you do it right, it works awesome. So for every single feature I drive, I try to follow this pipeline for the features, and I'll have a case study in a few slides that kind of goes through that. And then I think Davis might speak to this in his talk a little bit later, but just for this audience, it's my observation that experience design at Adobe is very focused on, you know, design thinking, design principles to solve business problems. And the key things that I see the design team doing and doing very well is ideating, collaborating with PMs. And, you know, of course, they do their research and prototyping. There's tons and tons of reviews where you need to story tell, go through your mocks and Figma or any other tool. and say, here's the flow, here's what we're thinking, and then you just refine, refine, refine. And sometimes that can take weeks. Sometimes it's super fast. Kind of depends on, what the feature is. And then we always, always try to validate with customers. So, and I'll make a little plug here. I'm always looking for new users of Photoshop Desktop who are interested in giving their feedback about new features I have. So if you are a Photoshop Desktop user, and you're interested in meeting with me, let me know. Find me on LinkedIn because I'd love to meet with you and get some of your opinions about some new stuff we're working on. And then the final two things that I see is, obviously our experienced designers deliver UI specs, so the engineers know what they're coding, and then they actually test everything that goes out, and they report back, hey, I don't like this doesn't feel right, or does not work right, and they log tickets, and then it goes back to the devs and they try again. So yeah, this is, I think, a very typical workflow across all teams I've worked on for many years. So I think hopefully that gives a little insight on how things are done at Adobe. And then I thought this was kind of interesting. The key skills of an experienced designer kind of match up a little bit with product. And that was sort of, I think, what made my transition from experience design to product management kind of easy, because I already had some of those skills. I mean, there are definitely some differences, but if you look at a Venn diagram, these things are definitely, they match. And it's kind of cool because I love seeing that, when I work with my design partner, we're kind of on the same page about a lot of things. We understand common language, and it just makes things a lot easier when we work together. So I think this is cool. I don't know if there's any UX designers out there that are aspiring product managers, but if you are, I would be interested to talk to you. And yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. So I will segue over to the business side of Photoshop and our processes, which I think could be interesting. I think many of you know, obviously, Photoshop's been around for forever, like 30 plus years, and it has a very unique position in the marketplace. We have all kinds of customers that use it. It has a gazillion different purposes and workflows and tools, and you could spend practically a lifetime learning it. And I've been using it for 20 plus years, and I think every single day I learn something new, like, oh, I didn't know that was a feature, because there's just so much there. And one question I get asked very frequently is, how does Photoshop know and the team know what to focus on? How do we decide? And I kind of broke it down into these pillars. Sometimes there's a business need. Maybe another team dreamed up this cool idea and like, Photoshop should have that. And we have a business need to do it. And I do work on those kind of features. And sometimes they're just like, you just follow the existing designs and you make it happen. Sometimes there's new tech, like what Davis will talk about, all the AI tech that's out there. It's in Photoshop and it's awesome. And so sometimes there's tech that we need to convert into a product or feature, and we do that. Sometimes an engineer or a product manager has a vision, a dream. I wish, we had this, and we do sketches and we pitch it and it addresses a pain point, or, we offer something customers never even knew they needed. This is a space I like to work in, and I've worked in quite a lot this past year. This is the really exciting part of working on the Photoshop team, is just like bringing a dream to life. And then I also spend a lot of time on Twitter and Reddit, and I feel the customer pain. I feel when they are frustrated and, they're blocked or something super annoying, or they have a need. I look into it and I see, what can we do to help them? Can we help them? So a lot of the ideas also come from customers. And then sometimes you just got to do stuff to stay competitive. Maybe that there's a cool feature that another, product or, some innovation that you're like, yeah, Photoshop should have that. So this one is less because we tend to lead in this category, but sometimes, there is something cool that we grab even from other Adobe products and put it into Photoshop. So I think the key though, working on this team, on the Photoshop desktop team, the goal is always everything we do is about growing the business. So we want to keep our creative pros. So, make sure that we do things to make them happy, but we're also attracting new customers. And we spend a lot of time thinking about that, thinking about ways that, like what do new users think when they come into Photoshop? Do they know what they're doing? How do they learn? Why are they coming there? So the past couple of years, our team is focused on making sure our C pros are happy, creative pros are happy, and that we are attracting new users. And based off of this new user type of objective, we create some ideas and a plan to basically get new users into Photoshop and get them to work and have them come back. So when they come in there, they're not, oh my gosh, this is so much stuff. I don't know where to start. I don't understand anything. It's all about getting them oriented, onboarded, and actually using the product. So with that said, here is kind of a use case that I worked on last year, and it's kind of part of a sample objective. So I'm not going to actually give the real objective, but in a nutshell, we want users to find value in the first 15 minutes. And we're how do we do that? And the answer is we run a survey. We talk to hundreds, if not thousands of people, and we ask them, if you were in Photoshop, what would mean success, or what would mean it's worth paying for? And so we look for a trend in all of those suggestions, comments, feedback, and then we basically think of ideas that will help them get there. And then we define a target. So we say, okay, if we want to have new users find value in the first 15 minutes, the first thing they need to do is learn. And what do they need to learn? And how do they understand the user interface and the concepts, and understand some of the simple features, the beginner features. So in my case study here, I'm going to talk about a feature that I worked on last year. And you may, if you're a Photoshop user, you may have seen these. We have these cards that pop up occasionally in the product, mostly on the tools. And we've introduced videos that are about 1 minute long. And we started the project, we were thinking we could get it done in 3 months, but we ended up taking 6 months to do it, and we ended up shipping it in June 2023. And the hypothesis, which is usually what we always start a feature with, we have a hypothesis that if we provide learning videos in the product, we will have new users understand and reinforce these 4 habits of Photoshop. And the 4 habits are learning about layers, selections and masking, adjustments, and retouching. We feel like if you know these 4 things in Photoshop, you are going to be able to actually create something, save it, and then maybe come back. That's the goal. So through thousands of interviews with customers, we had found a common thread that people tend to, if they don't know what's going on in Photoshop, they immediately Google it, they go on YouTube and they watch a video, and then they come back. So the idea is that we offer what I call just-in-time learning with these in-app videos. And we think, I have kids that are teens, and, they're always on TikTok and they're always watching these really short videos. Nobody has time to watch a 20-minute video. It has to be under a minute or less if you're going to get anyone's attention. So the one KPI, or key performance indicator, is if people are actually watching the videos, they're using the tools, and they're coming back and reusing the tools. So that was kind of the goal, is to track the metrics for that specific thing. So this work included updating the visuals for what we call, these are called butler cards in Photoshop, including a little affordance for watch a video. The work also included creating and engineering a brand new in-app video player. We also worked with a Photoshop influencer named Aaron Nace, who, by the way, if you're looking to learn Photoshop, he has an amazing website called Flern. It's PH, Flern. And it's free. There's a free version and there's a pro version. So it's like I always point people there because his videos are excellent. And he does a really good job of teaching Photoshop. He has like a 30 days of Photoshop. And if you can watch those videos, you're good to go. I think you have enough knowledge to get going with Photoshop. So we worked with Aaron and we created 30 videos that would appear in Photoshop. And then, we have a couple of affordances, like I said, to play the videos. And we also have this existing Learn More link that sends people to words. Like, here's how you use the feature in kind of a written format. And then we also had the challenge, the engineering challenge, where to put all these videos, because we're not going to bulk up Photoshop another 2 gigs with pumping it up with 30 plus very big videos. So we had to figure out where are we putting them and how do we play them in the product. So there were some interesting user experience challenges and also engineering challenges. So when tackling a project like this, the first thing I do is partner with my design partner, and we do a ton of research. We see, okay, what are other in-app video players doing, or what does YouTube do for their video player, or any other product? Like, what are some of the key user experience patterns for in-app video players, and how can we get people into that video player seamlessly without annoying them? At the same time, I'm working with our developers and say, okay, here's the goal. We need this in-app video player, and we need it to do this and access a video on a server and have closed captions and those kind of things. So I write some requirements on what is needed for this in-app video player. And then as those two things kind of synthesize together, I'm working on planning. It's like, okay, the devs say it's going to take about 6 weeks to create this in-app video player and test it. And then I've got the Aaron Nace, he's doing all the videos, and he says, yeah, I think I can get all the videos done in 6 weeks. And then we have the content people. It's like, yeah, we can get the space on the servers and get the process ready in about 6 weeks. And then once we kind of have the plan, I bring everyone together and I say, okay, everyone, here's the plan. We got the designers have some mocks for what this in-app video player is going to look like and how it's going to work. And devs, we have, these mocks, and we walk them through it. And, here are all the right people. We get sign-offs from a bunch of people. And then we actually get started doing some coding. But part of this in the front end, before the coding happens, is I do a lot of documentation. I make sure I understand the user problem and make sure my design partner is like, yep, I get it. And if they don't get it or they don't believe in it, we have a conversation. We try to come up with the bare minimum of what this product feature enhancement would be. And we call that the MVP, the minimum viable product. So that we don't keep adding stuff like, yeah, it'd be cool to do this with the video player and do this and do that. I'm like, wait. Let's just deliver the basic, and we can always add on it later. But let's just get to a point where we can get it out to a beta or get some feedback, and then we can worry about adding stuff to it, features and whatnot. And then we always get a lot of customer validation. And I have a couple of slides that talk about how we do that, because it's super, super important. And, of course, like I said, many times I work with our UX partner on, high level, what do you think about this kind of flow, or, these type of interactions. And once we get the thumbs up, then they can kind of deep dive on all the other stuff, the smaller details. And then, like I mentioned before, working with our dev team, making sure that they're moving forward, solving the tech problems, getting a strong point of view on how they're going to code this. And then kind of a key thing as well is like, okay, kind of uncovering all the unknowns, all the, what I call the wild cards, which to me, for almost every feature I've worked on, the wild cards or the unknown risks, dependencies take up 80% of my energy. So it's all the knowns that are easy, and that's the 20%. But the 80% is where the real hard problems come in, and you got to make calls. You have to make decisions on, you have option A, option B. And that's where things get really slowed down. If you don't ever uncover those things early, it could be real trouble for a feature. And that's where you can kind of spin your wheels for weeks and weeks and then upset your devs because they're like getting yanked around, and then they kind of lose their motivation. You gotta, try to get back on track, and it just wastes a lot of time. So yeah, I do a lot of really good documentation and keep it up to date so everyone knows that this is the plan of record, and there's not like, well, I thought this and I thought we were doing that. It's like, nope, go to the wiki. This is what we're doing, and here's the plan. So it makes things really streamlined. So again, partnering with Experience Design, it's all about getting them in from practically day one. Like you have an idea, ideate, because they have a really unique perspective. And I've been working with Davis for about a year on a couple different things, and there's nothing more inspiring than ideating with someone and being on the same page and like kind of riffing off of each other and coming up with some cool ideas. So it's like you both are shepherding this feature through together. It's not like me telling the designer something. It's like we're collaborating together. And it's like we both are like designing and developing something together. And it's really, really exciting. And it's always better. Like if I did something, it's from my like graphic design perspective. But when you bring in more people and their perspectives, it's always better because you can't think of everything alone. So, and the other thing we do, maybe not necessarily with Davis, but do actual live prototypes where we could like send new users to a website that mimics Photoshop and like try to give them a prompt to do something and then watch and observe where they get stuck or where they succeed. Um, that's really, really, really important. And I feel like if you are still in school and you're learning, definitely learning the research part and the prototyping part of the process is a huge value add as an experienced designer. So that's something to definitely look into more and learn more. See if you can take any classes or anything on that. So when we came up with this idea for this in-app video player, our experienced designer, she had a couple of different ideas. She had an option A and an option B. And we had a little bit of a philosophical difference. And I was like, okay, let's do A/B testing on this. And so we did. And interestingly, the test came back exactly 50-50, which I was like, okay, so I need to make a call. As a product manager, what are we going to do? Are we going to add a giant play button? Or are we going to add another button down here that says, like a call to action? And I actually made the decision to do both because I just wasn't sure which one, because, with some of these images, I didn't know if the play button would be lost and people would see it. And I think a lot of Photoshop users are used to clicking on a button to do something, to create an action. So I thought, well, the data will tell us everything if we got it right. And I was right. And I'll tell you at the end what the answer was because I thought it was really interesting. So once we did that research and we got a 50-50, we made a couple decisions to do kind of this double strategy of click here to get the same in-app video player. The engineers went to work and they spent about 5 months building the product. And we put it out into pre-release and started getting a lot of feedback, which was really positive. And then we started iterating. So we had like a month of, fixing bugs and changing the design a little bit. I had the engineers change something like 3 times because we got a lot of feedback and then more feedback. And I was like, okay, here's the final decision. We're going to go with this. And that was kind of fun. So we ended up shipping 30 of these cards with the play button in the thumbnail and a call to action button here. And it was pretty cool because we started getting a lot of clicks right away. And just for a little bit of like historical background, obviously there was no videos before. There was a really beautiful GIF that would kind of show you how to use the tool. It was like a looping 20-second GIF that was up here in the thumbnail. And then really the only call to action was to learn more. And it would take you to a bunch of words. Sometimes it was really long. And I don't know, for like a tool like the Magic Wand tool, where it's literally you just like click and select, it's like, why do you need like 3,000 words to tell people that that's how the feature works? So I think if you watched a 20-second video or a 30-second video and learned something about it, it's going to be way better. So in a month, typically about out of 10 million users, about 150 people would click on the learn more with a bunch of words. Just really, 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 really low. Like it's almost nothing. What was interesting, and I'll give away the final metrics at the end, is that, you know, we just had no idea what, you know, if the learn more would get totally lost, anyone wouldn't see it, or if they would be confused by the two buttons. But it was definitely fascinating to see the engagement on these, and they looked awesome and they looked very clickable and interesting. So, so like I said before, we ended up doing a lot of internal testing. We went to Adobe pre-release. And if you guys don't know about Adobe Photoshop's pre-release program, you can sign up for it and you can see and test out all of the new features that are coming and give feedback. You do need to be signed up though you have to have an Adobe ID and actually pay for Photoshop. So this is like about 2,000 people where you can get feedback, and it's, you like download the build and you have some new stuff in there to test out. We also have a beta build that has a much wider audience. And lately it's been about, I think about 600,000 people. It gets a little bit higher when we have big, we had a max release recently in London, and it was kind of all over social media. So a lot of people grabbed this build. And this is where the features are in a pretty good state. You can try them out and give feedback. And then we closely monitor all the comments and feedback on Twitter and Reddit and all that. And then if a feature kind of is pretty solid, made the cut, we did all of our improvements, then we push it out to the general availability build that you would see when you open up your Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud desktop application. So this is kind of our funnel for testing. And we did exactly this for testing out our rich tooltips and our videos. And just one more comment about this feedback loop. And you can look to see what kind of skills you have as an experienced designer. Like, can you do any research, or can you partner with a researcher? Like, we have a ton of PhDs on our team that just go out and do research all day long and put studies up on usertesting.com, talking to customers. Are you comfortable doing that? Do you know how to do that? Because that's something that I think a lot of experienced designers on our team do, which is really awesome. Is feel very comfortable talking to people on Zoom and gathering info and listening to the right info, which I think is kind of a skill. Reading a lot, the forums, pre-release forums, beta forums, Twitter, Reddit, even Instagram, looking at usage data. And this is the key one that I think is really, really interesting. If you're in school and there's a class offered on how to analyze data, user data, I think that's a super, super valuable class to take. And also learning about A/B testing. We don't do it super often on Photoshop, but when we do, it's interesting. So I think taking a class or having some knowledge in A/B testing is really, really good. And then as far as all the other things are more product management focused, and it's like what to listen to, what changes to push forward with your engineering team, or if you have to go back to your designer, say, hey, we got all this feedback that this isn't working. Sometimes they have to rework the designs a lot. And then we come up with, you know, a phase 2 or a version 2 and try again. And then once the improvement is gone back into the product, then it's retesting and doing it all over again until you feel like you've got something that works, that you can get out at least for our first release. So we try very, very, very hard on the team to follow this feedback loop, using this method, this channel of these different builds to do our testing. So I think it's pretty cool, and kind of rare. I've worked on a lot of different products at Adobe, and this is the first team where we have this kind of funnel. We're getting user feedback, and it is, I can't stress enough how valuable and important it is to be able to actually get that kind of feedback out in the wild before you send it out and have people who are paying for the product get it for availability and use. So the final results from our rich tooltip product feature thing, I was kind of blown away. So as of March 1st, we had 2.75 million views of these videos, which is really a lot, especially compared to the previous interaction with the Learn More link, which was in the hundreds. We were getting like 3,000 views on the videos a week on each and every one of the tools. And when I looked on March 1st, these video views keep going up. They not like tremendously, but they are going up. So to me, that was a good investment of money and time and engineering, because people are actually using these videos to learn in the product. They don't have to leave, go to Google, watch the videos, come back, you know, because you can get distracted really easily and lose your focus and maybe never open Photoshop again. So when you keep people in the product, they're likely to actually finish a task, or at least finish like whatever they wanted to do, like learn something, do a tutorial or whatever. They're going to stay at least a little longer, which is what we want. So the videos are played 16 times more than any kind of Learn More link engagement. So clearly, people do not want to read. They want to watch. And they want to learn by watching someone do it. They don't want to try to read something and figure it out. And that's kind of a no-brainer. It's like obvious. The other thing is that we can tell if you are a first-time user coming into Photoshop. And those buttons to watch the videos are clicked 40 times more than reading, which is crazy, crazy good. And that feeds right into the original objective, is to keep people in Photoshop longer, to get value, and to come back. And so we can measure if they come back also. So, you know, the jury is still out on that, which I'll go over on the last slide. But I think in my mind, just having the engagement on these videos is super positive. You can turn the videos off, and some pros are annoyed by them. And you can turn them off, but not very many people do. And I suspect that they probably don't know that you can turn them off. But the fact that they don't go Google, like, get rid of these annoying videos, and then turn it off, that's not really happening. So to me, that they strike the balance of being useful, but not annoying. So that's always like a good UX win. And then, as I said before, the views keep increasing release over release. And this is just a graph. And I report back to my manager, because, you know, he's the one that asked for the budget for this feature. And, you know, we report up to our VPs that, yep, this was a good use of money and time, because we are getting, you know, like just crazy high engagement with these videos. And I kind of track, you know, release over release. When we have a max conference, or when there's a holiday, we see a big dip, and inevitably I'm going to get asked, oh my gosh, why did that go way, way, way down on that day? And I'm like, oh, it's Thanksgiving. Obviously, no one's working in the US. Same for Christmas. So, right after the holidays and the new year, it's just like the usage spikes again. And I've noticed for every single release, we have a release every month, the usage spikes and then goes down until we have another release, and then it spikes again. So it's interesting to see that kind of usage cadence. So overall, a year later, after we had we started and shipped our feature, I feel like the videos exceeded our expectations. The response has been positive. And, I look on Reddit, like I said before, and, people can be brutally honest. And when they're pissed off, they do not hide it. And I haven't really seen hate, overall hate to this feature, which is good. I think even the seasoned pros occasionally use these videos. And the fact that they're not super annoying is, just an added benefit. We plan on investing more so that we can go to our VPs and say, yeah, these videos just killed it. They're so awesome. We want more money so we can do more videos because clearly they're getting watched. But with all that said, if we go back to the original objective, we want people to stay in Photoshop. We want them to use the feature that they're learning about and come back. Still a year later, after all the data analysis, I can't say definitively, yes, this feature contributed to the objective. And I think that that's kind of interesting because you can do all this work, you can get all this amazing feedback and, kind of have a slam dunk and still not be sure that you're really getting people to learn the 4 habits to stay in Photoshop and come back and find value, which I thought is interesting. Sometimes you can get that. And I think the one feature that is kind of an outlier that we definitely know that people come back and find value is what Davis is going to talk about later today. The gen features, people use them and it brings them back. And, that one, we know absolutely for certainty, those are like amazing features that people love. So, these are kind of like the businessy side of, working on the Photoshop team that maybe people don't think about, but it always goes back to business. And it's kind of one of those things that I kind of enjoy doing as well, is like gathering the metrics and trying to understand people's behavior based on clicks. So yeah, this is kind of the fun part at the end to see did you do an awesome job or was there room for improvement and learn? So in conclusion, I think, product management is every single day is different in a good way. I've been a product manager on 3 different teams and it's different in every single team and product that I've worked on. It's super dynamic. It can be a little stressful because everyone's looking for you for direction. It can be super rewarding, especially when you deliver something that people have been complaining about for years and years and you fixed it and they're all happy. It's very gratifying. Or you've innovated something that is like a new tech that you got out there and, people didn't even know they needed it or wanted it. And now they have it. And that is like a crazy good feeling. And, to put that on your resume, like I shipped this, or like for Davis, like I was the lead designer on Adobe AI Gentech features, or one of them. That is like crazy cool. So yeah, I think it's a great job. It's one that I'm super glad I transitioned into. I think it's been a good fit for me. Not every day is awesome, but most days are. I think every PM and design partner communication and critical thinking skills are really key to being good at this job, especially on the Photoshop team, because there are many, many, many constraints that you need to work around. And you have to think of a lot of different scenarios. And it's a lot different than working on like a web product where it's pretty straightforward. I had no idea how complicated designing and developing features on Photoshop is. I've worked on some features for almost the entire time I've been on the team. And one feature I'm shipping finally next month that I worked on for 16 months. It's taken so long. And I'm glad when it'll be done because I'm tired of it. But yeah, it's, you always have to work around the constraints, which I think is kind of an interesting part of this job. And I guess to conclude, like I said before, if you are a new user to Photoshop and you're interested in talking, I have tons of questions for you. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm always interested in connecting with people. I love working with students. Like I said, I love University of Washington, so I'm always like anything I can do with UW and DubTech's been amazing. So yeah, I'm always interested in connecting with people. So that concludes the presentation. See if there's any questions. I have not looked at the chat pod at all, so I don't know if anyone else has.
Sure. Yeah, I can say the questions which have come in.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for such a nice presentation. I actually have used the feature which you discussed today as well. I found it really useful when I, was trying to learn new features in Photoshop, and I think, it's such a useful tool to everybody in the day-to-day life.
Cool.
So the first question we've received, this is actually the start of the presentation. It was, do you believe it'll become harder to become a generalist PM?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I really don't know. I feel like if you are someone looking for a job, it is good to kind of brand yourself and talk about the areas where you fit in. And I always like to encourage people to, obviously look at the job description and then figure out how you're going to brand yourself to that job. And I don't feel like generalists necessarily get the limelight the same way that if you called yourself a UX PM or like MBA PMs, it's a slam dunk, because that's like, how do you make money? And I think that's why our team has kind of focused a bit on the MBA PM because we have a lot of new areas of the product that require that type of skill. And I feel like the generalist just sort of doesn't get a lot of love. I personally would never call myself a generalist because I don't think I would get I don't think my resume would get looked at as much. But every company is different, every role is different. Maybe for a startup, a generalist is the thing because they need a Jack or Jane of all trades. So yeah, sorry, don't answer that question definitively, but I'm all about branding yourself into a particular area.
I agree. I think branding always helps, having some differential value proposition that says this is what makes me different always helps your story versus just saying I'm, just like every other person on the block.
Exactly.
Now we have another one, which is from an anonymous participant. They said, when we need to conduct user testing, should we test with the same participants in each round?
That's a good question. I have not, but I will be honest that it is one very hard to get people. So what I prefer is to find people that I can just do a 30-minute call with on video. And then either they try it out or I walk through a flow and they give me their feedback. People are super busy. And this may sound bad, but when you come from Adobe, and if I have any colleagues other than Davis on the call, they probably will be pissed that I say this, but we should pay them. And because we don't pay, there's no incentive for people to come back over and over again. And so I guess if I had my way, I'd give, people money, and I think that would incentivize them to come back because I would prefer that they did. When I do user testing tests, I actually can see some of the people come back that are the same. So it's like, that's their gig. They do user testing as their income. And I do see the same people coming back, which is kind of cool, but it's by accident. So yeah, I would definitely prefer, but there has to be some incentive to bring them back.
Understood.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate with the struggle of always trying to get users to do user testing on a call.
Yeah, it's
Um,
hard. It's very hard.
yes. We have the last question for today before we shift into teach and stock, which is what kind of questions do you ask when doing customer interviews in a customer feedback loop?
Yeah, great question. So I always start with tell me how you use Photoshop. I am always surprised how people use it because, I use it in a very specific way. And it's always so eye-opening to see how people use it day to day, professionally or for fun. I like to listen to people's gripes. There's a lot of things that people don't like about Adobe, don't like about Photoshop, and I listen. And I've actually been the past 3 days in 5 customer calls. Some of them were really hard, and we listened to people just kind of rail on us a lot. But it's very important to listen. I try to walk people through very casually a workflow, and I'm just listening for keywords of things because people get nervous when you interview them. And so that's why I like the one-on-one because everyone's more relaxed. So I just try to listen for areas that they're confused on because no one wants to look like they don't know. And so there's a lot of guessing and, just try to make people comfortable so that they give honest feedback. Um, so yeah, I think those are kind of the keys is how to use the product. What do you think about this thing? And what would you do differently?
Awesome. Cool. Definitely, I think that's the most important thing when doing this interview. So I will now go ahead and conclude today's talk. I want to again give a shout out to Amy. She's supremely resourceful. You can definitely get in touch with her on LinkedIn as well as an ADP list. She's always available and happy to help. And we will also, be going ahead and sharing this deck with you all for you all to review. And if you'll want to, y'all will be meeting Amy again actually tomorrow. We have her as a judge as well. So she will be a judge. And if she's judging your track, potentially you'll be receiving feedback from her as well.
Yep.
So we look forward to having you as a judge tomorrow. Amy, thank you so much for
Yes.
joining us today.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Right. Bye.
Bye.